Everybody seems to be talking about ChatGPT and how fantastic it is. But what is ChatGPT and how can it help you to improve your English, especially if you're using it for self-study? So let's have a look together. Now, it's the buzzword. Everybody seems to be talking about it on Twitter and in groups I'm following about teaching. So I wanted to test it and see if it can be useful for you. Is it a flash in the pan? Is it a 5-minute wonder? Is it a fad? Or will people start to use it regularly, especially teachers in the classroom and students like you when you're studying by yourself? So let's go and have a look. And here we are. If you type ChatGPT in Google, you will find it. It is a website and this is the URL. It's a computer program like a chatbot, and it was launched by OpenAI in November 2022. So I'm recording this in January 2023. It is quite new, and how it works is you type a question. So you type a question down here in the box and the computer will answer you using AI, artificial intelligence. So in the introduction, I used the expression flash in the pan. Is this a flash in the pan? Well, what does that mean? If you don't know and you're studying at home, you type the question into this chat box at the bottom here and ask the question, what does flash in the pan mean? And let's see what it says. Flash in the pan is an idiomatic expression that refers to something that is initially successful or promising, but ultimately fails to achieve long-term success or lasting results. The phrase is often used to describe a person or thing that experiences a brief period of notoriety or fame, like this is at the moment, this chatbot, but quickly fades into obscurity. For example, you might say that a particular celebrity was a flash in the pan if they had a few hit movies or songs but then faded from the public eye. That's quite accurate. I like that description, but maybe we want another example. So let's just type in, can you give me more examples? Question mark. Certainly, here are a few more examples of how you might use flash in the pan in a sentence. So it's giving you some context here for this expression. The new restaurant in town was a flash in the pan. It was packed on opening night, but by the end of the week it was practically empty. Many people thought that the new social media platform was going to be the next big thing, but it turned out to be just a flash in the pan. So yeah, it's giving you examples here, giving you good context and helping you to understand the expression. Let's look at another word I used in my introduction to this video, a fad, F-A-D. What's a fad? And ChatGPT tells us it's a short-lived trend or craze that becomes popular very quickly but eventually fades away and disappears. Fads are often associated with a particular activity, product or phenomenon that becomes popular for a short. So as you can see, we're getting pretty good dictionary definitions of words and expressions that maybe we don't know. And if you need more examples or more explanation and sentences with context, then this will give it to you. So then I thought, well, what if we looked at a mistake that's quite common? And this is from a teacher's perspective. I know for a fact that this is not correct. It's the worst film I've never seen. So there are two mistakes in this sentence, and I want to ask the chat if the chat thinks this is correct or not. So let's see if it knows grammar. No, this sentence is not correct. The correct way to say this would be, it's the worst film I've ever seen. The word worse is a comparative form of the word bad. That's correct. While worst is the superlative form, also correct, meaning it is the most bad of all. That's a good explanation. In this sentence, the speaker is saying that the film is the most bad film that they have ever seen, so the superlative form worst should be used. And then it gives a suggestion. Here's how you can remember the difference between worse and worst. Use worse when comparing two things. Comparison. For example, the movie is worse than the last one we saw. Use worst when comparing more than two things. For example, this is the worst movie of the 3 we saw this week, which is good. So I wonder about never and ever, because I wrote here I've never seen. So let me clarify that. Why is never not correct in my sentence? Because now remember, this is a conversation we're having with the computer. So I'm now referring back to my original sentence. Let's see if the computer remembers my first question. Is this sentence correct? Because we don't know when to use ever and when to use never. So yes, it remembers and it goes back to my original sentence. In the sentence, it's the worst film I've never seen. The word never is not incorrect grammatically, but it doesn't make sense in the context of the sentence. The word never means at no time or at any time. So when it's used in the sentence, I've never seen, it means the speaker has not seen something at any time in the past. Okay. However, in the sentence, it's the worst film I've never seen, the word worse implies that the speaker has seen the film. Yes, correct. Because they're using the comparative form of the word bad to describe it. This is why the word never does not make sense in this context. I agree with that. It's contradictory to say that something is the worst film that you've never seen. Yeah, because you've never seen it. To make the sentence correct, you would need to change worse to worst and remove never. So it again goes back, it clarifies again what's wrong with my sentence, and it gives me the correct sentence here. It's the worst film I've seen. This would mean the speaker has seen the film and thinks it's the most bad of all the films they have seen. So yeah, I mean, so far it is detecting grammar, it's remembering what I've said previously. Now let's imagine you're at home and you're studying and you're thinking, well, I wonder what the opposite of worst is. Shall we find out? Yeah, the opposite of worst is best. Best is a superlative form of good, meaning it's the most good of all. So if something is the worst, it's the least good, while if something is the best, it's the most good. And it continues, without me asking, it continues to give some examples. And it also gives me some advice on how to remember the difference between best and worst. Best is the superlative form of good, while worst is the superlative form of bad. Both best and worst are used to compare more than two things. For example, this is the best movie of the 3 we saw this week, or this is the worst movie of the 3 we saw this week. Let's try one more example of grammar, because I received a voice message this week from a listener to the podcast, and the voice message said, "I'm so much grateful." Now I know that there's a mistake there. Let's see if the computer does. Is "I'm so much grateful" a correct sentence? No. "I'm so much grateful" is not a correct sentence. The correct way to say this would be "I'm so grateful." Yeah. In this sentence, grateful is an adjective, that's correct, that means feeling or showing appreciation for something. The correct way to use this word in a sentence is to say, I am grateful, or I'm grateful. So it gives you the contraction as well. The phrase I am so much grateful is not correct because so much is not needed and does not make sense in this context. So it also correctly noticed that, and I'm also very impressed by the speed, by how quickly I'm getting answers back from this chatbot. It seems to be thinking incredibly fast, even though it's not thinking, it's searching a database, but it really is quick. That's impressive. Okay, but what if you don't know an expression? So you're not checking for mistakes, or you just want to know, you want to ask the chatbot to suggest expressions for you. So let's use this. Imagine you want to invite someone for a coffee in English, but you don't really know what to say. How can I invite someone for a coffee in English? Well, there are several ways you could invite someone for a coffee. Here are some options. Would you like to grab a coffee with me? That's interesting. That's a colloquial expression there, quite informal, to grab a coffee. An unusual collocation for a computer to think of. Do you want to meet up for a coffee? There's a phrasal verb, to meet up. I was thinking of getting a coffee. Do you want to join me? I like that. I'd love to buy you a coffee and catch up. Another phrasal verb. Are you free sometime this week? So here the computer has noticed the informality of the question, and we're given here some language that is very appropriate for an informal situation. Remember to be polite and considerate when inviting someone for a coffee. It's always a good idea to offer to pay for the coffee, if you can afford it, unless you have a specific arrangement with the person you are inviting. It's also a good idea to give the person the option to decline the invitation if they are not interested or unable to meet up. So there we have some social etiquette suggestions there from the computer, but I wonder, now this is a common mistake that Spanish speakers make. I tend to teach Spanish speakers fairly often, and because of translation, in Spanish you would say tomar un café, which many Spanish speakers translate incorrectly to take a coffee, which we don't usually say in English. So let's test the computer on collocation. Is it correct to say, do you want to take a coffee? Well, I don't necessarily agree with that. I would not say, do you want to take a coffee, as a native speaker. So I don't think it is a common way to invite someone to have a coffee with you. Now, because this is taking examples from the internet, maybe it's taken so many take a coffee collocations that it is saying it's accepted and common, although I do not agree. So that's the first time I'm a little bit disappointed in its reply. Let's test its translation. Now we've got Google Translate, which is getting better and better. We've got DeepL, which is also a good translating AI tool. But let's test this chat to see how it translates. Would you like to grab a coffee with me into Spanish, please? ¿Te gustaría tomar un café conmigo? Yeah. And we have more suggestions. ¿Quieres reunirte conmigo para tomar un café? Pensaba tomar un café. ¿Quieres acompañarme? Yeah. And it gives you the translation into English, which is very helpful. Me encantaría invitarte un café, charlar un poco. Okay. Remember to be polite and considerate. Yeah, that's the same as before. So not too bad, although I didn't like that take a coffee as being a common collocation. Now, these are very specific examples. Let's go wider now and ask it this question about general grammar. When should I use a gerund in English, and when should I use an infinitive? Now, that is a very complicated area of English grammar. So let's see what the chat says. It gives us a definition of a gerund, which is useful. And it gives us a definition of an infinitive. There are a few general rules to follow when deciding whether to use a gerund or an infinitive in a sentence. Use a gerund after prepositions. Yes, that's correct. I'm interested in swimming. Use an infinitive after certain verbs, some verbs such as want, hope, expect, need, dare, and like. Although with like, you can also use a gerund. Use an infinitive to express purpose, the infinitive of purpose. I go to the pool to swim, that's correct. Use a gerund as the subject of a sentence or after certain verbs. Mind, stop, and suggest. You can also use an infinitive after stop. You can use a gerund but also an infinitive. So it's not incorrect, but it's not giving us, I would like it to give more information. Swimming is my favorite exercise. I enjoy swimming, yeah. It's important to know that there are many exceptions to these rules, and it can take practice to get a feel for when to use it. Get a feel, that's very vague, very obscure. When to use a gerund or infinitive. If you're not sure which form to use, it can be helpful to try both and see which sounds better in the context of the sentence. I'm not sure how accurate that is and how helpful that is. So I'm curious now, because it gave us stop to use after a gerund, and it gave us like to use after infinitive, although you can use infinitive and gerunds after both those. So I'm just curious to ask it this question: can I use a gerund and an infinitive after some verbs in English? Let's see what it says. Yes, some verbs can be followed by either a gerund or an infinitive, depending on the meaning you want to convey. Here are a few examples of verbs that can be followed by either a gerund or an infinitive. Remember, and then we get an example. I remember locking the door. I remember to lock the door. Try, I'm trying to fix the computer. I'm trying fixing the computer. No, that is not correct. You can say I try fixing the computer when it breaks, but not I'm trying, not with the present continuous. That would have to be I'm trying to fix the computer. So that's not correct information. I forgot to call you. I forgot calling you. That's okay. I regret telling her. I regret to tell her. So it's telling us the verbs, some verbs that we can use both, and if I ask it to give more examples, it will give more examples, but it's not explaining why. As you can see, well, no, I can't see the different meanings. It's important to pay attention to the context and the meaning you want to convey when deciding. If you're not sure which form to use, yeah, we had that suggestion before. So I'm going to go a bit deeper now and ask it this question. Because it used the example of try before, and there was a mistake when it used the gerund. So let's ask it this question: what's the difference between try fixing the computer with the gerund and try to fix the computer? Let's see if it knows that. The meaning and the grammatical function of the verb try. In the sentence try fixing the computer, the verb try is followed by a gerund, we know, which is a verb form that ends in ing, Try means to make an attempt or to test something out. Now that is what I wanted to hear, because when try is followed by a gerund, it does mean to test doing something, to attempt to do something. The gerund fixing refers to the action of fixing the computer, and the sentence as a whole means make an attempt to fix the computer. Yeah, I agree with that. Now let's look at the infinitive. In the sentence try to fix the computer, the verb try is followed by an infinitive, we know, which is the base form of the verb we know. In this case, the infinitive to fix refers to the action of fixing the computer. And the sentence as a whole means make an effort to fix the computer. That was what I was hoping to see, because that is the difference. So when it's an infinitive, you're making an effort to do something. For example, try to lift the table, or I tried to carry the box, but it was too heavy. So it is making an effort. So it did get the difference correct with the verb try. Let's see how it finishes. Overall, the main difference between these two sentences is the degree of effort or commitment expressed by the verb try. In the first sentence, try suggests a more casual or experimental attempt, that's correct, while in the second sentence, try suggests a more serious or determined effort. Yeah, I like that. That is quite a good explanation. Well, the next thing I'd like to try is phrasal verbs. Let's ask the chat the most common 20 phrasal verbs in English and see if the list we get shows us really common phrasal verbs. So it starts by giving us an explanation of what a phrasal verb is, which is useful if you don't know. The explanation is correct. It's also correct to say they're very common in English, although I would say more in informal English, and can add meaning and nuance to a verb. And here we have our list. It's type in 20 common ones. So let's see if indeed they are common to come up with. And here it gives you an explanation. Run into. Yeah, but that's common, but I don't know if it's among the 20 most common. Put off, yeah, go on, look up, get along, turn off, turn on, they're common, aren't they? Get back, get over, fill in, find out, get up, set up. How common is set up? Not sure, not very. Show up, take off is very common, although there are several meanings. That's the problem with these phrasal verbs. They often have more than one meaning. The aeroplane takes off, doesn't it? It leaves the ground. And you can also use take off when you're impersonating somebody. But it also does mean to remove something. Break up, catch up, hang up, to end a phone call. These days, is that a common phrasal verb? I don't think it's in the top 20. And drop off. Well, if you have drop off, you should have pick up, which is the opposite. I wonder if, can you translate these into Spanish? Now, I haven't said what I want translated, I've just said these. So if it knows I'm referring to the phrasal verbs, then it's connecting this chain of conversation with me. And it does connect it, certainly. Here are the translations of the phrasal verbs in Spanish. And it seems to be quite accurate. Look up, buscar, go on, seguir, turn off, apagar. So yeah, it's giving you a translation into Spanish, which is quite impressive. I'll wait for it to finish and then I'm going to ask it to translate into another language. Chinese, whoops, I've misspelled Chinese, but it knew I meant Chinese. I forgot the E there. And it's given me the Chinese. So I haven't tested many other languages. I've been working mainly in Spanish so far, but I think it does have a very deep knowledge of most of the well-known languages, which is very impressive. Now let's look at exams, because I'm curious to know how it can help, not help you to cheat, but help you to answer exam questions. So I'm going to ask it a past paper B2 first writing question for the Cambridge writing exam for B2 first level. And the question is here: write an article in intermediate level English about being kind. Include in the article what being kind means to you and why it's important to be kind. Use no more than 190 words. So I've given the chat parameters here. I want an article which I'm asking for a register here, a tone of writing. So I don't want it to be too formal. I want it to be entertaining, maybe informative, because you can have informative articles. I've specified the level I need, intermediate. Actually B2 is upper intermediate, but we'll say intermediate for now. And the question, what being kind means to you, is a very personal question. So I'm curious to know how the computer interprets kindness. And this is a real question from a previous exam. Why is it important to be kind? Does the computer know this? And I've given it a limit of 190 words as another parameter. And it started already. Wow, that's incredibly quick. Being kind is an important aspect of being a good person and living a fulfilling life. To me, being kind means showing compassion, empathy, and understanding. So to the computer, to me, it's important to show compassion, empathy, and understanding towards others, and be willing to help them in any way you can. It also means being respectful and considerate of other people's feelings and going out of your way, that's a nice expression, to make them feel welcomed and valued. It's separated the article nicely into 4 paragraphs. There are many reasons why it's important to be kind. Firstly, good signposting there. That's something we teach in B2 First article writing. Firstly, it's the right thing to do. Treating others with kindness and respect is simply the decent and moral thing to do. Secondly, good signposting again, good connecting expressions. Being kind can help to build strong relationships and connections with others. When we are kind to others, they're more likely to be kind to us in return, and this creates a positive and supportive community. Finally, being kind can have a positive impact on our well-being, our own well-being and happiness. When we do good for others, it brings us joy and satisfaction, and it helps us to feel more connected and purposeful in life. In conclusion, being kind is a crucial part of living a happy and meaningful life. Wow. It's important to show compassion and understanding towards others and to make an effort to be kind and considerate in all of your actions. The rewards of being kind are numerous, and it's something we should all strive to practice every day. Now, this is a very, very well written article and would definitely score highly, very high marks in the B2 First exam. It is a bit long. I'll just go and test how many words there are here. Yeah, so I just tested 228 words there are in this article. It's a bit long. I asked for a maximum of 190, but apart from that, it is an excellent interpretation of an article for an English exam. Now, let's do one more test on writing, but let's change the register and the tone of the writing. So write a short report, which is very formal, on transport facilities in Madrid, Spain, describing the existing transport facilities, explain what's good and bad about them, suggest how they could be improved in the future. Limit the report to 190 words. Now this is also a past paper, a past exam question in the writing section of the B2 first exam. I took it from a past exam. So let's see if the tone, if the language, the register has changed here. Madrid's a large city with a well-developed transportation system. There are several options for getting around the city, including the metro, buses and taxis. So even though they've used the phrasal verb getting around here, the first paragraph is a good introduction. It doesn't have an overly informal tone. It's quite factual. Let's continue. One of the main advantages, so that's referring directly to the parameters of what's good and bad. The extensive network of metro lines which cover most areas of the city and are relatively inexpensive. Again, good information there. The buses are a convenient option with many routes covering the city and its suburbs. Additionally, taxis are readily available and relatively affordable. Again, good formal language, good connectors, nice short paragraphs that are well spaced and well organized. However, now obviously we come to the disadvantages, the bad things. There are a few issues with the transport system in Madrid. One of the main problems is the heavy traffic, which can make commuting by car or bus slow and frustrating. The metro can also get very crowded during peak hours and it can be difficult to find a seat. Very good. In order to improve, so now we're going to the second part, how they could be improved in the future. It will be helpful to invest in more efficient public transportation options such as light rail or tram systems. I cannot imagine one of my B2 first students using this terminology. To invest in more efficient public transportation options such as light rail or tram systems. This could help to reduce traffic congestion and make it easier for people to get around the city. It would also be beneficial to invest in more bike lanes. I like that, beneficial, as formal language, beneficial here. And encourage the use of alternative modes of transportation is a lovely expression. Overall, another good connector. With a few improvements, the transport system in Madrid could be even more efficient and convenient for residents and visitors alike. Another excellent example of B2 first writing. Just let me check the word count. So I posted that into a Word document and it gave me 219 words, which a little bit over the parameter of 190, but I think that would just about be acceptable. Any more than that, it will be too long. So very, very impressive on writing for exams there, and I'm pretty sure if you gave it the parameter of a different level, it would adjust the language. I want to finish the video with one question just for a bit of fun, perhaps, although it is a very contentious issue at the moment, the issue of LGBTQ+ rights and transgenderism. It's a hot topic in today's political landscape, and I want to ask it this question. What is a woman? Let's see if it knows the answer. In today's politically correct society, it says a woman is a female human being. Women are biologically distinguished from men, interesting, by their reproductive organs and the presence of certain hormones. In terms of societal roles, women have historically been seen as the caretakers and nurturers within families and communities, though this is changing. Wow. As gender roles become more fluid and equal rights for women are increasingly recognized, women can be found in a wide variety of professions and roles, and they make important contributions to society in many fields. Now, from what I've read, the ChatGPT information comes from no later than 2021. And it was really in 2022 or last year that this kind of terminology really became prominent. So I'm really impressed that it has recognized the difference, the changing way that we see gender in society, and the fact that it has been debated so much on the internet and in society in general. So very, very interesting. So I hope you found that useful. In short, ChatGPT can be a huge help and advantage to you for self-study, as I hope I've shown here in this video, but it does have its drawbacks. So I would always double check, especially as we saw with some grammar explanations, more complicated grammar. It has its problems still, but I think they will be solved quickly. Just be careful and don't only rely on it, but it is a really, really useful resource for your English studies. I tried to use it to help me write the notes for a podcast episode, and it was a disaster. It kept repeating the same information, so it wasn't useful for that task. But for many, many tasks, especially some of the things I've shown here, I think it is fantastic, and it will be getting better. So if you have any comments, please put them below. I'd be very interested to know what you think, and if you have tried it, what your experience is. So thanks for watching.